Greetings and welcome. We are in Junior English and we are now back with one of the more remarkable texts of the early American epoch, the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. Now, I think we were already talking earlier about this really amazing thinker. One of the things that makes him so important, and I would write this down because I don't know that we said this before, is that Benjamin Franklin is a man of active mind. Not passive mind, active mind. In fact, he even said that quote that I think I might have given to you yesterday, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. In other words, your mind should always be working. Constant working, working, working. We said yesterday that Ben Franklin wanted to improve himself. This project of self-improvement is a major industry that starts with Franklin and continues to today. If you don't believe me, go on YouTube and simply type in the phrase self-improvement and watch the tens of thousands of videos that will come up where somebody's going to stand in front of the camera and say, you can be a better person. All you have to do is A, B, C. Ready, go. You know what I'm saying? And some of them will even charge you money for a special plan. All of that project starts with Ben Franklin, but the point I want to make before we return to page 142 is that Franklin was interested in improving himself, not everybody else. Not everybody else. He wanted to improve himself. And the process that he took was to start by asking, where can I improve? And he made a list of these 13 principles that we were already looking at in an earlier lecture on page 142. It's an interesting list. And for example, just to get us back in our frame of mind, you might look at that list and ask this simple question. Of the 13, this is a 3B question by the way for you. Of the 13 that are listed there on 142, which for you is the one you say, yeah, no way. I could never do that one. That one is for me too hard. Some of them, I can figure that one out. But others of them, no, I can't figure that one out. One of my students once said she was known to be rather loud in class, that number 2 for her was impossible. Sorry about that. That was an attempt at a joke. But she was serious. She said, that whole thing of silence, I'm not so good at that. When I get in my car, I got to turn on music. When I get home, I got to turn on the TV. I've got to fire up the computer. I can't have silence in my life. Silence kind of drives me nuts. Franklin said, silence is not always so bad. Sometimes silence helps you figure stuff out. And one or two of my students have said, you know, that's not a bad idea. I mean, if I really am jacked up and I need to figure out my own head, I can go for a walk where I'm all by myself, alone, quiet. Right? Which for you is of the 13, which for you is the easiest? As you look at them, you go, I already do that. That one's for me, that's a no-brainer. Some of you will say, you know, I look at, for example, this thing of, frugility at number 5. I'm a very frugal person. I don't waste stuff. I don't like throwing stuff away. I recycle if I have to, but I take good care of the resources that I have. If I got a job, I don't waste my money. I let other people waste theirs. You know what I mean? Some of you will say, I'm already kind of doing that one. For Franklin, he wanted to try to improve in all those areas. Now we're going to return back to 142, and we're going to start right away now with finishing and listening to Franklin's observations about his project. Let's write it in our notes that way. This is the project of self-improvement. The project of self-improvement. I like the word project because it suggests the idea of W-O-R-K. Work. It's not easy. It's not easy. Okay? So we're going to come back to it, and we're going to talk about his intention. Do you see that? My intention being to acquire the habitude. That is to say, the habit. I would write that word down. A habit. Something you do more than once. Something you do repeatedly. Got me? So I'm going to do it, then I'm going to do it again, then I'm going to do it again, until finally I can do it without even really thinking about it. That was his goal. In other words, he wanted to live his life in such a way that the goals that he set for himself, he accomplished through repetition, habit, doing it over and over again. Are you with me on page 142? I challenge you right now to stay focused in this reading. Because Ben Franklin would say, yes, that's what you should do. Be focused on the things that you're doing. Concentrate on the things that you're doing. And when you find yourself unable to concentrate, bring yourself back and say, I got to work on this. This is a problem for me. And really concentrate. So let's work with the reading now. And let Ben Franklin challenge you a little bit to say, wow, this guy really thought about his life and trying to improve his life. Instead of just saying, it's just the way I am. I'll never change. It's just the way I am. Ben Franklin said, no, I want to believe that a person can change, can improve. What an interesting idea. Let's listen now as we go forward, right? So follow along. Here we go.
My intention to acquire the habitude of all these virtues, I judged it would be well not to distract my attention by attempting the whole at once, but to fix it on one of them at a time. And when I should be master of that, then to proceed to another, and so on, till I should have gone through the 13. And as the previous acquisition of some might facilitate the acquisition of certain others, I arranged them with that view, as they stand above. Temperance first, as it tends to procure that coolness and clearness of head, which is so necessary where constant vigilance was to be kept up, and guard maintained against the unremitting attraction of ancient habits and the force of perpetual temptations. This being acquired and established, silence would be more easy. And my desire being to gain knowledge at the same time that I improved in virtue, and considering that in conversation it was obtained rather by the use of the ears than of the tongue, and therefore wishing to break a habit I was getting into of prattling, punning, and joking, which only made me acceptable to trifling company, I gave silence the second place. This and the next, ordered, I expected would allow me more time for attending to my project and my studies. Resolution, once become habitual, would keep me firm in my endeavors to obtain all the subsequent virtues. Frugality and industry, freeing me from my remaining debt and producing affluence and independence, would make more easy the practice of sincerity and justice, etc., etc. Conceiving, then, that, agreeably to the advice of Pythagoras and his golden verses, daily examination would be necessary, I contrived the following method for conducting that examination. I made a little book in which I allotted a page for each of the virtues. I ruled each page with red ink, so as to have 7 columns, one for each day of the week, marking each column with a letter for the day. I crossed these columns with 13 red lines, marking the beginning of each line with the first letter of one of the virtues, on which line and in its proper column I might mark by a little black spot every fault I found upon examination to have been committed respecting that virtue upon that day. I determined to give a week's strict attention to each of the virtues successively. Thus, in the first week, my great guard was to avoid the least offense against temperance, leaving the other virtues to their ordinary chance, only marking every evening the faults of the day. Thus, if in the first week I could keep my first line marked T, clear of spots, I supposed the habit of that virtue so much strengthened and its opposite weakened that I might venture extending my attention to include the next, and for the following week keep both lines clear of spots. Proceeding thus to the last, I could go through a course complete in 13 weeks, and 4 courses in a year. And like him who, having a garden to weed, does not attempt to eradicate all the bad herbs at once, which would exceed his reach and his strength, but works on one of the beds at a time, and having accomplished the first, proceeds to a second. So I should have, I hoped, the encouraging pleasure of seeing on my pages the progress I made in virtue, by clearing successively my lines of their spots, till in the end, by a number of courses, I should be happy in viewing a clean book after a 13 weeks daily examination.
Now let's pause for a moment and just study this part of our passage really quickly. First of all, let's notice that all he's doing on page 143, what we just listened to, is he's outlining in a little more detail the order of the kinds of things he wanted to do for his own self-improvement. Notice that the first thing at the top of 143, and I have had students that say, this makes total sense to me, is he said, I had to clear my head. Clear my head. I had too much junk going on up here. I had too many voices going on up here. I had too much negative energy going on up here. Had to clear my head. He said, if I figured I could clear my head, then number two, I could gain knowledge. See, and I'm hoping that you're writing down now at level 1 or 2A these ideas. What are the major ideas of our passage we just studied? One, you got to clear your head first. Okay? Temperance allows for you to clear your head. Don't be a person of radical extremes, which can then, he said, lead to greater silence so that you can gain knowledge. He says it this way: better to listen than to talk. Whoa, what an interesting idea. You might want to write that one down and see if you agree or not. Better to listen than to talk all the time. He says then at number 3, that would lead to order in his life. Now the way I like to talk about this is the distinction that we'll draw between intentional and random. Intentional and random. Franklin argues there's 2 ways to live your life. One, random. You wake up in the morning, something's going to happen, you're not totally sure what, you go through your day, all this stuff happens to you, kind of random. Intentional means you wake up in the morning with a plan. You're going to go through your day with an idea of what you want to accomplish. You make a little list of things you want to get done. And then at the end of the day, you can ask yourself the question, was I able to accomplish it? Some people have said a little to-do list is a great way to start your day. I once had a student that said, oh, my mom does this every morning. She sits down and she makes a list of all the things she wants to get done that day. And when she finishes, she marks it off the list. So that by the end of the day, she can look at her list and know she accomplished something for that day. That's pure Ben Franklin. That's pure Ben Franklin. Once he said you have order in your life, number 4, then you can get to resolution. Now, we got to talk about this one. Because in a high school, every new semester, you always hear this one. Yes, this is the one. I'm really going to do it now. This is going to be it. I'm going to start, and I'm going to finish, and I'm going to do great, and I'm going to be, the past is the past. I'm going to do it. I'm really going to do it. And then you come back and visit them 3 weeks later. How's the project going? Not so well. Really, what happened? Well, I did want to do it. And I was so excited on the first day of school. But like school is every day. Kind of like living. And I would say, kind of like breathing. Right? So I like a term. You might put it in your notes and think about it. Franklin didn't use this term, but I think it will make sense to you. It's the difference between will, I'm going to do something, and sustained will. Now that's interesting. Let's say it again for your notes. It's the difference between will, I'm going to do something. Yes, I'm going to really do it. This is my school year, I'm going to do it. Yes. Versus sustained will. Day after day after day, month after month. How do people make up their mind to do something and they stick with it. Gee, I'm not very good at that at all. I like make up my mind to do something and then I like say I'm going to do it and then I like forget. See? Ben Franklin said that's how he was. And he said, the only way I'm going to be successful in my life is to actually accomplish the stuff I say I want to accomplish. Sustained will. So for him, notice temperance had to come first with some silence so you can gain some knowledge. And then after that you have your order, a plan. Finally you can get to resolution. Can I do it for 3 days? Can I do it for 4 days? Can I do it for a week? See what I'm saying? Right? The sustained will. Wow, this is interesting. At number 5 and 6 in his little list, frugality and industry, he said it was all about this. I like Franklin because he's very pragmatic. He says, you know what? Here's the thing. Can't live with your parents the rest of your life. Sooner or later, they're going to throw your can out the house and you're going to have to get a job. And you're going to have to make some bank. That is you. But when you start making that money, how quickly will you go into debt? So that all the time you're working. Work all the time just so you can keep up. Franklin says, I think that's called dumb real dumb. He said if I really wanted to work on my project, I had to be debt-free. Not go into debt. So he worked hard to get himself out of any debt so that he could keep going. Notice he then talks about his method. Let's put this in our notes, is that his little black book. This is famous in Ben Franklin lore. He created a little notebook where he wrote stuff down. He wrote stuff down. Notice his method was to not try to accomplish it all at one sitting at the same time. No. He said, these are way too hard for me. And I talk to ball players all the time that are like this. At the beginning of the summer, in the off season, dude, I'm going to lift. I'm going to lift every day. I'm coming in every night. I'm getting up in the morning. I'm going to go running. I'm going to do all this lifting. I'm going to do all this stuff. It's going to be awesome. And I meet them in August. And I say, how'd it go? Not so well. What happened? Dude, I did it. I totally did it for one whole week. Everything. I did my whole schedule. All 25 things I said I was going to do. I did it for one whole week. And then in the second week, it's really hard to do all of them. Franklin recognized that he was weak and he couldn't do it all at the same time. But he didn't see that as a fault. So he decided to take them one at a time. Just the first one for a week. And see how well I can focus on that. Then the second one, the following week. That method where you write stuff down. You keep some kind of note for yourself. Interesting. In the end, he uses a very interesting word picture. Take a look at it. I'm on 143. He says, doing this, proceeding thus to the last, I could go through a course complete in 13 weeks and 4 courses in a year. In other words, he could do 4 rounds of his investigation in a year. And then he says something interesting. He says, and like him who having a garden to weed does not attempt to eradicate all the bad herbs at once, which would exceed his reach and his strength, but works on one of the beds at a time. Right? So for example, you go out in your mom's garden and she says, I need you to weed all of this. Dude, that's like really big. Can I just weed this much of it today? Yeah, as long as you weed more tomorrow. I promise I will. That's what he said. That's his word picture. It's kind of a cool word picture. Instead of saying, go out and weed the whole garden. Are you serious? You can't do that. Go out and say, I'm just going to work on this small patch and get it done. When I'm done, I'm done. Tomorrow I get up, again, go back to work. Over a period of time, the garden can be weeded. What an interesting word picture. The argument is, let time help you accomplish your goals. Okay? Now we're going to turn on to page 144. And we're going to let him tell us a little bit more about the order. And even, are you seeing it on 144? He's even going to show you how he broke down his days. He wanted to be, write this down, this is our important word, in control of his life. Wow, fascinating. Let's take a listen to what he has to say, shall we? Here we go.
The precept of order, requiring that every part of my business should have its allotted time. One page in my little book contained the following scheme of employment for the 24 hours of a natural day. The morning. Question: what good shall I do this day? 5, 6, 7. Rise, wash, and address powerful goodness. Contrive day's business, and take the resolution of the day. Prosecute the present study, and breakfast. 8, 9, 10, 11. Work. Noon. 12, 1. Read, or overlook my accounts, and dine. 2, 3, 4. Work. Evening. Question: what good have I done today? 6, 7, 8, 9. Put things in their places. Supper. Music or diversion, or conversation. Examination of the day. Night. 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sleep. I entered upon the execution of this plan for self-examination, and continued it with occasional intermissions for some time. I was surprised to find myself so much fuller of faults than I had imagined, but I had the satisfaction of seeing them diminish. To avoid the trouble of renewing now and then my little book, which, by scraping out the marks on the paper of old